I think it was probably when I was around 3 or 4 years old. I felt sort of a detachment from my dad, and it just manifested itself in I mean, it wasn't like being gay. It was just I felt an attraction for guys and men. A lot of guys go through exploration. I think it was kind of early. I think I was around 8 or 9 years old, and a good friend of mine who I was friends with for a while, we used to sort of go swimming at night and mess around a little bit. It was nothing complicated, and it was kind of innocent, but that was probably the first time that I acted out on it. I came out to different members of my family at different times. In fact, I have a great story. One time I was probably around 19 or 20, maybe 21, and we were going camping. The boys in my family, I come from a family of 5 boys. We're going camping with my dad, and my dad's like, "Oh, ride with me in the car," because my little brother drove, my older brother drove. Uh, because at that age everyone wants to have their own wheels. So I'm like, okay, I'll ride with my dad. And on the way up, we were talking a little bit, and about a week before, I had come up with my boyfriend at the time, but I hadn't said anything to my dad. And he asked me about this guy, and I was sort of skirting around the issue, and he looked at me at one point and goes, "That was your boyfriend, right?" And to that point, I thought my dad was completely clueless. And so I came out to my dad, or my dad sort of came out to me when I was around 20, 21. My older brother, I came out to a little bit sooner because he had come to live with me from Colorado. And my boyfriend was arriving from Paris at that time. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to the airport and to pick up Scott." And my brother was like, yeah, right. He was sleeping. And I was like, okay. And I ran back and I said, "Just for your information, he's my boyfriend." And he looked at me and he goes, "No kidding." I was like, so it wasn't like I was trying to hide anything. I think it just wasn't a topic of discussion. And little by little, one by one, members of my family, we sort of discussed it, but all at different times. It wasn't like this big event that happened. Even my grandmother, who was an old Italian lady, one day we were watching TV together, and the Gay Pride Parade was on the news. And I was started to get a little uncomfortable because, the Gay Pride Parade always goes a little crazy. But this was back in like the 80s. So it wasn't as much as it is now. So she was watching TV and she says, she goes, "What are they doing?" I said, "Oh, it's the Gay Pride Parade in New York." She looked at me and she said, "That's not quite my thing, but I don't mind it." So even she, who was a lot more traditional and provincial than the rest of my family, kind of accepted it in her way. I think she took me for the person I was first, and that was just an attribute of my personality. It wasn't everything that I was. At school, it wasn't a really big issue for me during high school. I was attracted to guys, and I definitely hung around with like the gay kids, but it wasn't like we were loud and proud. And at that point, it was 1970, in the 70s, between 76 and 79 was my high school, and I was also a big kid. I was taller and larger than most people, and I had more of a problem with being an artist than being gay. But I got over that because I made friends with one of the pothead jocks in the school. And as soon as we became friends, because we were in art class together and science class, as soon as we became friends, it sort of just it sort of opened the door for me to other cliques in the school, and I never really had a problem. Well, in science lab, my science teacher had assigned us as lab partners, and he was not into it. And then he noticed that I was into it, and we were doing some stuff that he thought was cool, and he got a much better grade because we were lab partners. And one day he asked me to decorate a notebook for his girlfriend, Karen Sykes, who was like ultimately the coolest girl in school. And I did this great job with her name and everything, and he gave it to her. And after then, I had like total carte blanche with the jockheads. And so I bridged the gap between being the weird artist guy and, I had a few different cliques of friends. Well, I definitely define it as being gay, but I don't choose to wear that on my sleeve. I think it depends on what situation I'm in and who I'm with. It's like anything else. I don't go around screaming, "I am an American," or I am from Monroe, New York. I look at it as it's a part of my personality, but it's not the headline. And I'm not saying that it's wrong for people who do or who don't. That's just how I define it. I look at it as another aspect of who I am, and it's important, but it's not paramount. Well, I think for anyone coming out or whatever the issue you might have is, you need to embrace yourself and you need to feel comfortable with whatever it is that you bring to the party of life. Because if you don't, then I can't. I don't think how can anyone else embrace who you are? You've got to own who you are, good, bad, or indifferent, and and that is the piece of advice: is just try to understand who you are and embrace it if you can. And if you want to change who you are, that's great, you know, and that goes for anything. But I think you need to understand what it is you're about before other people can. I think your project is very important. I think it helps people, young and old, understand that being gay, bisexual, trans, whatever it is they are, is is kind of normal in a way, that we have lives beyond just you know being gay. We have dogs and houses and boyfriends and cars and jobs and lives and hobbies and all things that most people have. That being gay is just a portion of who we are, and it's another thing that we have to express ourselves and respect ourselves and respect in others. That's really important because people are all different regardless of what they are. It's important that you respect who people are and what they're about. They might not be like you, but diversity is what makes up life. If everything was the same, we'd be a big blob of gray matter. But we have trees and birds and insects and beautiful sunsets and stars and lots of different things. If everything was the same, then it would be boring really quickly. So I think that's what I would add, is that I think this project is very important to show not only people who haven't come out yet, but people who have come out yet, and people who don't need to come out because they're not gay, that people are people and they have a lot of different special things to bring to each other.